Touchdown Aspen, Daddy's recovery trip. I stared at Vanessa's post until the words blurred on my phone screen. My father was standing between my mother and sister in front of a snow-covered lodge, bundled in an expensive ski jacket, grinning like he hadn't just undergone a kidney transplant 3 days earlier. A kidney transplant made possible because I gave him mine. But that wasn't what made my stomach drop. In Vanessa's hand, half covered by her glove, was a familiar orange prescription bottle. My bottle. I pushed myself upright, and pain tore through my side. "Dad," I whispered, calling him. Once. Twice. 3 times. No answer. Vanessa finally picked up. "What?" she said over loud music. "Where are my painkillers?" She went quiet for half a second. Then she laughed. "Relax, Liana. Dad needed this trip, we all did. You took my medication. Don't start." The call ended. I looked at the empty spot beside my bed where the bottle had been. Hours earlier, my father had squeezed my hand and promised, "You saved my life. I'm not leaving your side. I'll take care of you every step of the way." Now I could barely walk to the bathroom without gripping the wall, and my entire family was hundreds of miles away celebrating his recovery. I opened Vanessa's post again. Comments poured underneath it. "So happy Richard is doing well. What an amazing family. Enjoy every second of your second chance." I almost laughed. Not because anything was funny, because none of them knew where that second chance had come from. For years, I had been the dependable daughter. When Dad needed help with a bill, I handled it. When Mom forgot an insurance payment, I fixed it. When Vanessa got herself into another financial mess, I quietly transferred money and told myself family was supposed to help family. And when Dad's kidneys began failing, everyone looked at me. I was the match. I was always the match. I lowered the phone and stared at my laptop across the room. Getting to it took nearly a minute. Every step pulled at the fresh incision beneath my shirt. When I finally sat down, I opened a folder I had created before surgery. Inside were bank records, account authorizations, payment schedules, and several documents my family didn't know existed. I had prepared them because something about the weeks before the transplant had bothered me. Questions Dad kept asking. Comments Vanessa made. Expenses that somehow kept becoming mine. Back then, I told myself I was being suspicious. Now, staring at a photograph of my family partying in Aspen, while my prescription bottle sat in my sister's hand, I understood exactly what those warning signs had meant. My father thought giving him my kidney proved I would keep giving forever. He was wrong. I placed my fingers on the keyboard and opened the first document. They had made their decision when they left me behind. Now I was about to make mine. The night before the transplant, Dad had sat beside me in the hospital room and called me his angel. "You know what this means to me, right?" he asked. I nodded. He squeezed my hand. "After this, you won't have to worry about anything. I'm going to take care of you." I wanted to believe him. For weeks, I had ignored the little things that didn't sit right. Dad complained constantly about the cost of follow-up care. "Insurance should cover most of it," I told him once. "Most isn't all," he replied. Then he smiled. "Good thing we've got you. You're the responsible one." I laughed because that was what I always did when he made responsibility sound like a compliment. Vanessa was worse. She skipped every appointment. She never asked what recovery would be like for me. Instead, 2 days before surgery, she leaned against my kitchen counter and asked, "How long before you're working again?" "I don't know. A few weeks, maybe longer." Her eyebrows lifted. "That long?" I stared at her. "I'm having an organ removed, Vanessa." "I know, I'm just asking." But I noticed she had been more concerned about my paycheck than my recovery. That night, I finally asked Dad the question I had been afraid to ask. "If something goes wrong with me, Are you really going to be there? He looked offended. Liana, I'm serious. He reached for my hand. After what you're doing for me, I would never abandon you. So I went into surgery, carrying that promise with me. 3 days later, he was gone. Dad claimed he needed a change of scenery for his recovery. Mom agreed immediately. Vanessa volunteered to stay with me. She lasted one afternoon. I woke from a nap and found an open suitcase on my couch. You're going too? I asked. Vanessa barely looked up. It's already paid for. I can barely stand. You have your phone. Then I noticed the prescription bottle beside her purse. That's mine. She grabbed it quickly. I only took 1 or 2. My back's killing me from traveling. My mouth fell open. That was prescribed after surgery. Stop acting like I robbed a pharmacy. 20 minutes later, she walked out with her suitcase. That evening, Dad finally texted me. I opened the message, expecting an apology. Instead, it read, "We're leaving tonight. Don't make this harder than it needs to be." I stared at those words for a long time. Then I looked toward the laptop sitting on my desk. For the first time, I stopped asking whether my family would ever choose me. I started asking what would happen when I stopped choosing them. By the next morning, Aspen was everywhere on my phone. Vanessa had posted from breakfast, the hotel lobby, the ski lift, and finally a private lounge overlooking the mountains. One caption read, "Celebrating Dad's second chance with the people who never left his side." I actually stopped scrolling. Never left his side. There were already hundreds of comments. Richard deserves this. Family is everything. So beautiful seeing everyone together after such a difficult surgery. Nobody mentioned me. Nobody seemed to know who had spent hours on an operating table so Dad could have that second chance. Then a notification appeared. Vanessa had started a family video call. Normally, I would have ignored it. This time I joined. The screen filled with relatives. Aunt Carol was there, 2 cousins, Mom, Vanessa. Then Dad appeared from a leather chair beside a huge fireplace. "There he is," someone shouted. "Our miracle man." Dad smiled. "I'm feeling stronger every day." Aunt Carol said, "You're lucky to have such an incredible family surrounding you." That was when I spoke. "Dad." His smile disappeared. "Liana." I adjusted my phone so they could see me sitting in bed. "Did you tell them you left me 3 days after surgery?" Silence. Dad glanced toward Vanessa. "Liana, this isn't the place." "Why not?" Mom leaned toward the camera. "Honey, please don't turn this into something ugly." "I'm not turning it into anything." Dad sighed dramatically. "She's on strong medication. She's emotional right now." My eyes went straight to Vanessa. "Actually, that's another problem." Vanessa stiffened. I continued. "The pharmacy contacted me because someone tried to request an early refill." "Liana." "I told them my prescription bottle disappeared before you flew to Aspen." Aunt Carol frowned. "Vanessa, what is she talking about?" Vanessa's face reddened. "I took 2 pills, my back hurt. She's making it sound insane." "You took her prescription medication?" my cousin asked. Dad snapped, "Enough." The entire call went quiet. "You saved my life," he told me, "and now you're using that to make everyone feel guilty." I stared at him. Even now, somehow he was the victim. "No, Dad." I closed my laptop halfway. "I just needed to understand what you chose." Then I disconnected. That evening, my phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't family. It was my bank. Multiple charges had hit accounts connected to expenses I had been covering for years. Household bills, recurring payments, and purchases my family had stopped even asking me about. I opened the transaction history. Aspen charges were sitting among them. My chest tightened. They hadn't simply abandoned me for their vacation. They had gone there assuming I would help pay for it. I reached for my laptop and opened the folder I had prepared before surgery. This time, I didn't just look at the documents. I started reading exactly what would happen when I activated them. At 8:12 the next morning, I made the first call. I need to remove my authorization from several family-linked payments, I told the representative. She verified my identity, then began reading through the accounts. For years, I had quietly covered expenses whenever Dad claimed money was tight. Utilities, insurance gaps, emergency payments, bills that were supposedly temporary. Temporary had somehow become permanent. "Do you want all recurring payments from your personal account stopped?" she asked. I looked at the incision beneath my shirt. Yes. I made the second call. Then the third. I removed myself from financial responsibilities that should never have belonged to me. I canceled automatic payments attached to Dad's household expenses and withdrew access wherever my money had been treated like family property. Then I called my doctor. My prescription medication was taken without my permission. The nurse's voice immediately changed. "Do you know who took it?" "My sister." I explained what Vanessa had admitted during the family call and told her about the Aspen photograph. The incident was documented, and the pharmacy created a formal record as well. By lunchtime, everything was moving. At first, my phone stayed quiet. Then Dad texted, "Did you change something with the accounts?" I didn't answer. 10 minutes later, Vanessa messaged, "Why is my card declining?" Another message followed. "Liana, answer ME." Then Mom called. I let it ring. Her voicemail arrived seconds later. "Liana, whatever you've done, please undo it. We're away from home. This isn't the time to prove a point." I stared at the screen. They still thought this was punishment. It was. I was simply no longer financing people who had left me recovering alone. More messages arrived. "The hotel says the payment isn't going through. Dad needs his card. We have reservations. Call the bank." Then Mom sent the one that almost made me laugh. "Are you really going to punish your family after saving your father's life?" I set my phone face down. An hour later, my laptop chimed. The email I had been waiting for had arrived. The financial and legal protections I had arranged before surgery were active. Confirmed. Completed. My family could complain, threaten, or guilt me. They couldn't reverse them. Then Dad sent another message. "You don't understand what you've done. Everyone will know you abandoned us." I read it twice. 3 days earlier, he had left the daughter who gave him a kidney struggling to walk alone. Now a declined card made him feel abandoned. Before I could type anything, my phone rang. "Dad." Decline. Again. The bank. Then Vanessa. "Mom." Dad again. The notifications stacked across my screen until I stopped counting. By evening, there were 63 missed messages. I turned the phone face down again. For once, the emergency belonged to them. They came back from Aspen 2 days early. I knew because Dad called from outside my apartment. "Open the door, Liana." I was still moving slowly, but I walked to the door without rushing. When I opened it, Dad stood there with Mom and Vanessa behind him. Nobody looked like they had enjoyed the end of their vacation. Vanessa spoke first. "You humiliated us." I stared at her. "You took my medication. It was 2 pills. And you left with the bottle." Dad stepped forward. "Enough, we need to fix the accounts." There it was. Not "How are you feeling?" Not "Are you recovering?" The accounts. I stepped aside and let them enter. Dad sat across from me. "Whatever point you were trying to make, you've made it." I wasn't making a point. Then, what do you call freezing us out? I stopped paying expenses that belong to you. Mom folded her arms. After everything this family has done for you. I almost answered automatically. Then I stopped. That sentence had controlled me for years. Instead, I opened my laptop. Before surgery, I reviewed every financial connection between us. Dad's expression changed. I turned the screen toward him. There were household payments, recurring charges and expenses I had been covering whenever someone claimed they needed temporary help. Some had continued for years. I realized something before the transplant, I said. Every time there was a problem, it eventually became mine. Dad shook his head. That's what families do. No, that's what I did. Vanessa rolled her eyes. You're acting like we forced you. You didn't need to. You taught me that saying no meant I didn't love you. Nobody answered. I continued. I still gave Dad my kidney. Dad looked at me. And I don't regret that. His expression softened slightly. Then I finished. But I decided before surgery that giving you an organ would be the last time I proved my love by sacrificing myself. Dad stared at the documents. I had separated my finances, removed unnecessary authorizations, and created boundaries around the money I had spent years using to rescue them. The arrangements became final while they were in Aspen. That's why the cards declined, Vanessa asked. Some of the expenses you expected me to keep covering stopped being paid from my money. Dad stood. You knew this would happen. I knew it could. And you waited until we were away. No. I waited until I understood whether anything had actually changed. I looked directly at him. You promised you would care for me. His jaw tightened. I was recovering too. And you recovered at a ski resort. Mom looked away. Vanessa muttered, This is ridiculous. I turned toward her. The pharmacy documented what happened with my prescription. So did my doctor. Her face changed immediately. You reported me. I reported that my prescribed medication disappeared after surgery. For the first time since they entered, Vanessa had nothing to say. The social fallout followed quickly because Vanessa had already provided the evidence herself. Her Aspen posts remained online long enough for relatives from the video call to start asking questions. Aunt Carol called me privately. I thought you were being cared for, she said. I was. Then came the question my family had avoided. If you gave Richard the kidney, why weren't they home taking care of you? There was no convincing answer. The same relatives who had congratulated Dad began questioning him. Vanessa deleted her posts, but deleting photographs couldn't erase what people had already seen. Her admission about taking my medication made things worse. Dad stopped calling me his angel. Vanessa stopped calling me dramatic. Mom stopped telling me to fix things. Because I finally stopped fixing them. They had to restructure their own expenses, cover their own bills, and live without treating my income as an extension of theirs. I continued recovering. Slowly. Then I returned to my work as a pediatric physical therapist. My life became quieter. That surprised me most. There were fewer emergency calls, fewer guilt-filled messages, and fewer problems that somehow required my money. Months later, Dad asked to meet. We sat across from each other in a small cafe. He looked healthier. The kidney was working. I owe you an apology, he said. I waited. I should never have left you. I nodded. I know. He looked surprised. There had been a time when I would have rushed to make him feel better. I didn't anymore. I hope someday we can repair this, he said. Maybe. And that was enough. I didn't need to punish him. I didn't need him to understand every year that had led me there. I had already changed the only thing I controlled, my own choices. I gave my father a kidney because I wanted him to live. But when my family left me alone afterward, they taught me something I should have learned years earlier. Saving someone you love does not require surrendering yourself to them. The kidney I gave my father saved his life. The decision I made afterward saved mine. And I never confused sacrifice with love again.